This episode will resonate with all the Indians who live here in the US. We're going to talk about H1B, we talked about the lottery system, we talked about EB2, EB3, EB5 visas. We talked about how, as non immigrants, we must be prepared for the new Trump administration. Today's episode is entirely shot in English. Please do watch, share, and subscribe to Telugu Tales podcast as we grow. Welcome to our show, Mr. Chand. So before we start, let me share a story with you. This happened to me a couple of years ago. One of my friends called me. He had a nice, happy family. He shared a piece of information that was very emotional to me. He was in this country for 20 years and his H1B was denied. With a deep voice, he had one question. What is going to be the future of my daughters? Essentially, it struck me that day that a lot of people might be in this situation. It cannot be just him. Do you come up across these kind of stories, Mr. Chand?
First of all, it's a very sad feeling, and it's also very unfortunate to be in that situation. This happens time to time, and especially in this case, this person has been in the country for 20 years, and he has 2 children, and then you get hit with this kind of bad news. It's not uncommon. It is the result of our broken immigration system. He's been in this country for such a long time with a lot of approvals. And one fine day, some officer decided that he's not up to the mark, or maybe something else is wrong. So it's a sad reality, and I just keep hearing these stories time to time. I see this as a part of my career, and I just don't want to be in that spot. And it's that feeling, the feeling of being helpless. You just don't know what to do. Yes, you can advise him what to do next. So pretty much the law does not give you many options. You have to leave the country and then fix your immigration status.
But before we get into a lot of immigration problems, before we get into a lot what we are hearing, there's a lot of chirping going on. How did your immigration journey start? When did it start? How has immigration evolved essentially?
So I came into United States in 2000. So I went to engineering school 96 to 2000. 2000 I graduated, and the same year, July of that year, I just came to United States. Anytime you get out of a master's program or a bachelor's program, you don't really have experience. So the challenge is all about finding a job, finding the right job. And that is what I think should normally happen. Your challenge should be to find the job that you want. We did not worry much about immigration back then. Immigration was not this big of a challenge. And what I see different nowadays is worry about the government. You have to worry about their policies. You have to worry about getting a proper immigration status. You have different set of rules for OPTs right now. You have different set of rules for the H1Bs. You have more competition for H1Bs. So those are the challenges that at least we did not have to see. The things like H1B lottery. Every year I see people getting into the H1B lottery. Every year I see people doing second masters. But immigration was always secondary. Getting a job was more the primary thing. Right now, we have a broken H1B lottery system. So there are so many students coming here, getting valuable education, spending so much of effort and money to get the masters. And then you realize that even if they have a job offer, the lottery is what's stopping them. Yes, they have a very good job offer from Microsoft. But what if he or she does not get selected in the lottery? It's end of the day. It's end of their career. So right now, it's not just the job. It's also that immigration that's impacting what they can and what they cannot do, which was probably not a problem 20 years back, where a H1B lottery was not a big deal. Then green cards. Back then, getting a green card probably, I would say, it took 3 to 5 years for anybody that was really serious about getting a green card. Everybody had a pathway. If you had a good job offer, you had a pathway. Nowadays, I mean, you probably saw the news that somebody who was born in India might not even get a green card for, say, 50 to 100 years.
Yeah.
That's the sad reality. So even if you have a good company like Microsoft sponsoring your green card, there is no guarantee you can get a green card in less than 100 years. So, and that's what I think is different now. The landscape has changed. We have these rules, restrictive rules and unfair rules that are not being challenged or changed. I think that's the biggest difference back then versus back now. You didn't have to fight the immigration system. You just had to get the job.
There is a lot of pandemonium right now with President Trump taking the charge on the 20th of January. How should the students who are coming to the US, like especially the master's crew, how should they view this?
There is a lot of scaremongering happening out there. Every newspaper, every media article talks about how things are going to be bad and how people have to run and come back into the country if they're outside the country. Overall, I think I want to be optimistic. The reason is we have seen President Trump in 2016 to 2020, and I think he's going to do his duty, which is take care of the local population, the local citizens, make sure they have a good economy, make sure they have a good career and all those things. That's a part of his job role, which I think he will do it. And does that mean that he's going to throw out all the students out of the country or abolish the H1B program and whatever news that we are seeing? Honestly, I think anything of that sort would not happen. He's very clear. He understands that people who are going through the legal process, they should be welcomed into the country. He always talks good about the immigrants. He has problems with illegal immigrants, people who are not following the rules, who are violating the rules, entering into the country. Day one, they're violating a rule and getting on with their lives. Those are the ones that I think he has a problem with. People who are going through the process, who are getting into the queue, following the proper process, people who are talented. I don't think he has any problems at all. He's going to refine the process. That's the bottom line. So the students overall, I don't think they have to worry anything about rules changing drastically. But one thing is very clear. You have to obey the laws of the country. Students are actually bringing a lot to United States, both in terms of money pumped in to the universities and the research. A lot of these students, they are doing master's programs, they're doing PhD programs, they are writing a lot of articles, they're contributing to the research. So it is a two-way street. They are helping United States, US is helping them with their careers. The bottom line is everybody follows the rules. I don't think they have to worry with President Trump in power.
Let's say if I'm going to a school and I'm about to graduate, I have a job. Now it could be through a small mom and pop shop, or it could be through a top 5 like FANG companies, right? What do I do as a student to do my due diligence? What are the steps that I can take? How do I be prepared?
The rules are very, very clear, whether it is CPT employment or whether it is OPT employment. There are certain things that one is supposed to do. And if the students are following those rules, there is no issue. And I'll give a very, very simple example. If somebody is graduating with a master's degree in computer science, they get OPT. And they cannot use that OPT and work anywhere in an irrelevant job. So they cannot go and work in some restaurant. They cannot do something else that is not relevant to their study. And then there are also rules about unemployment, how many days you can be unemployed. So I have cases where people just go out of the country, they say, we'll take a vacation, go to India on OPT, and then say, I want to stay in India for 3 to 4 months, then find a job and then come back. There are strict unemployment rules. And if somebody is not following those unemployment regulations, you're jeopardizing your status. So the bottom line is know the OPT rules if you're working on OPT, know the CPT rules if you're working on CPT, and ensure you're reporting to the school DSO. Always report to the school DSO any address changes, any work changes. Be in touch with your school DSO. Make sure your school DSO agrees. Follow the process, do your job, follow the rules. Ignorance of law is not an option. So you cannot use that argument that, hey, I don't know about this rule, so I made this mistake. No, unfortunately, ignorance of law is not even an option. So bottom line, just do the right thing, work with your school DSO, just get yourself educated. And by doing so, I think they'll be fine. And the big thing is don't ever get into any kinds of criminal brushes with the law. I have cases where somebody shoplifted like $3 or $4 item and they got in such big immigration mess. So anybody that's following the rules, anybody that's complying with the law, there is never a problem. And unfortunately, sometimes the rules are not fair. And immigration law is one of those things. It is not always fair. But we still have a duty towards this country, which is follow the rules, whether we like it or not.
I hear from employees about employers not paying them, employers not protecting their rights, they're forcibly benched. how is it going to be different for employers this time? What do I have to be careful as an employer?
Definitely, there is exploitation in the industry. The most common cases of exploitation that I see from employers. Number one, not paying on time. Number two, not paying on time, claiming that the vendor has not paid them or somebody else has not paid them. Number three, not letting them take proper vacation. A little bit more uncommon, but definitely happening. Taking money either for H1B or OPT training, complete no. Something like the equivalent of bond in India, for example.
Yeah.
So what it means is you're working for an employer. Employer says you have to work for me for 3 years. If not, we're going to do this, that. We're going to make you pay so much of thousands of dollars and so on. That's one form. And a little bit more probably could be legal is non-competes. Again, non-competes are based on the state law, but something like you cannot go and join these companies and these companies. You cannot, so you have to work for me. So certain non-competes are probably not legal. Some probably could be legal. But again, when we talk about exploitation, these are all the things that are happening. Restrict. In the United States, exploitation is not allowed. They find out that there is some exploitation happening, some human trafficking happening, the law is going to take a very serious turn. And in terms of the Trump administration, what I feel would happen is we are definitely going to see more DOL audits. We're going to see more USCIS audits, and we're going to see more enforcement. So there is this body called ICE, Immigration and Custom Enforcement. So they can go and arrest people. So what I feel is going to happen is you'll have more investigations. So DOL or USCIS. So these bodies will investigate, and then immediately the enforcement agency will step in. Somebody like ICE, maybe arresting some people. And I think we will have more of these things. There will be more money spent on those things, which means that if people are not really looking at law and trying to exploit some employees, they are more than likely going to be in trouble with the law. I think ICE is a very, very powerful enforcement agency out there. So I think it's a good time where people revisit their employment practices, make sure absolutely there is no exploitation of any employees.
Okay, that's a good point. As a student coming into this country, how should I be more prepared for the new administration?
They will be welcome only if they follow the rules. And I think what's going to happen in the new administration is they'll be looking more closely at who's following the rules and who's not following the rules. And I'll walk through some scenarios that I've seen. First thing is where a lot of people get in trouble is working without authorization. I've seen this happen so many times, and I see people, for example, you go to a restaurant, you see people students working at the restaurant. I see students driving Uber, and so these kind of things will be scrutinized. How do they scrutinize it? I'll give you an example. Just very recently, I had a student, and then he got deported back, and we were trying to figure out what happened. And this is what happened. He came into the United States after a vacation in India, and at the port of entry, his phone was taken away from him. It's a very common thing. It is very, very easy for the CBP officer to find out if you're doing some unauthorized, engaged in some unauthorized employment. You simply see the chat messages, WhatsApp messages. Even if these messages are deleted, they have mechanism where they can retrieve those deleted messages. So if you ever do work for unauthorized purposes, the CBP officers will find out. It's not that difficult. And you have some bad luck where you are the one whose phone gets taken away from you at the port of entry, you're going to get caught. Okay, and this is a live example, and this is not one or two examples. I've had number of examples where people got their phones taken away from them at the port of entry, and the officers found incriminating content on their phones, and they got deported back either for fraud or for misrepresentation. So everybody be cautious. Do not engage yourself in doing something that is not authorized by USCIS. Okay, so it's a very common thing that happens all the time, and I just tell people that you should not look for short-term goals, look for your long-term goals, and not working part-time for those places where you're not supposed to work at is something that you have to be very, very cognizant of. Lately, I'm seeing more and more incidents where people are getting arrested, and things such as somebody hit somebody's spouse, and the spouse did not have any issue of going back to the cops and complaining, but somebody saw that abuse happen, and somebody complained to the cops that there was this domestic violence. And domestic violence is a big no-no. You cannot engage yourself in domestic violence. So don't think that, hey, it's okay for me to hit my wife and my wife is okay with it. No, it's still illegal. So don't do things like that. Because domestic violence, assault, it's a huge crime. You can get deported for it, and more than likely you will get deported for it. So things like that. Be cautious. There are some cultural differences, but we are in US. You got to follow the US rules. Number one, shoplifting. More and more recently, I'm getting into this, seeing these incidents of shoplifting. I've had a case where a couple of girls shoplifted at a departmental store. They got caught, where they got charged with theft. The theft was not a big amount, less than $20, but they got charged. They got arrested, and now their whole immigration process is jeopardized. Not only that, anytime you get arrested, the public records are out there. So tomorrow your employer is doing a background check. It's going to show up on your employment record, employment history, or your background. These arrests are going to show up. So what that means is do not do anything where you can be charged with a crime. Don't even think about it. Stay away from crime. Alcohol is legal. Taking drugs, for example, marijuana. Taking marijuana is legal in some states. For example, New Jersey, Colorado, San Francisco. It is legal. So if a US citizen does weed in San Francisco, it is completely legal. It's not legal for an immigrant. So if you are somebody on F1 or H1, even if you're in San Francisco, do not do weed. It is still an offense as per the federal law. As per the state law, yes, it is probably okay. But as per the federal law, it's still a criminal offense. And criminal offenses for drugs are treated very, very harshly. You will get deported. So I'm seeing more and more students experiment with drugs. It's more of a recent trend. It's not on a large scale, but I do occasionally see these things happen. So stay away from drugs. Don't even get near drugs. You are going to jeopardize your immigration. And the last thing is alcohol. Again, sometimes what happens is people take some drinks and they don't realize the severity of it, and they feel, oh, my house is just like a block away. I'm going to drive to my house. I've seen people get caught and they are in such a bad situation.
That's well said. I didn't know the shoplifters were your clients.
Unfortunately, the thing is, the minute they get caught with shoplifting, they're not only hiring us as immigration attorneys, they're also going to criminal attorneys. And this is all expensive. So not only you're stressed, you're also having to spend a lot of money, and then there is probably no solution at the end of the day. So don't even get into a situation where you even have to be in that bad spot where you're having to defend yourself because you've been charged with a crime.
So let me ask you this: the CBP officers that you asked, right? They come, they confiscate your phone, they take them. Legally, can they do that? Can they just grab your phone, check your emails and all that? Or can you say, hey, you're not authorized to do it, it's my information?
It's a very good question. And even if somebody is a US citizen and they are in the airport and somebody is coming into the United States, they can even forcibly take the phone from a US citizen. So at the port of entry, at the airport, there is something called a border exception. So what the border exception says is, when you are at the border, the CBP officer, they can seize your phone without a warrant. So it is one of those very few places where your phone can be seized without a warrant. Normally, they have to go get a warrant, but at the airport, no. And that being said, they don't really do that for each and every person, but they have that right. And whenever they suspect something wrong might be happening, they could seize the phone, and they have done it a lot of times. They can detect fraud pretty easily. And if they suspect something fishy is happening, those are the kind of people who get called for a secondary inspection. They get pulled aside, and that is when all these kind of things start, where their laptops get taken aside, their luggage gets checked, probably their phone gets checked. All those things happen.
There's a lot of social media posts about employers abusing or violating the laws with their employees. What is their course of action with President Trump taking the office?
So employers, any employer hiring any immigrants, they should be ready for site visits. They should be ready for more enforcement actions, and they should be ready for more DOL visits. I had a client, And this client unfortunately did a big mess up. And what they did is apparently they've used fake client letters. They apparently went back to USCIS and stated that they have this project. And USCIS, because you attest everything under perjury of penalty, USCIS believed them. They believed that this particular company has this project available for this particular client, approved the H1Bs. Employees came to work for that company. And this company, what they did is they benched the employees. They did not pay them. The people, the owners, got arrested and they got charged with H1B fraud. In this case, misrepresentation, not paying employees on time. USCIS, maybe they might not catch you right today. Maybe they might not catch you next year. They might come 3-4 years down the line and prosecute you for a crime that happened a couple of years back. So be ready for more enforcement actions, and on a high level, revisit all the employment practices and make sure you're complying with the law.
H1B lottery has been the talking point the past couple of years. I think it's gotten better, but do you think there is more refinement that will come along?
In my personal view, one of the biggest mess ups that USCIS has done in the last couple of years was the way they approached this lottery process, especially with the electronic registration process. I think it's a good idea. Having an electronic registration process, it's a very good idea. It's going to save time, it's going to save money, it's going to refine the process. But the way they went and implemented this process upfront, this entire this lottery registration process, I think it was full of issues. This year when we had the H1B lottery, they finally fixed the problem. And they said, we are not worried about how many companies register for you. This time we are going to look at your passport. We're going to look at all the unique number of people and then do a lottery. Kind of solved at least that multiple registration mess that we had to see for almost 2 years. Because what was happening was this company, they were all colluding together and they were putting somebody in the lottery. The reason is it's only $10 for each registration. They have nothing to lose. They're not paying, they don't have to incur a lot of legal fees. It's a very cheap way of putting people in multiple places. Collusion is where you're trying to achieve an unfair advantage. Because what about this guy who was genuine enough, this company that was genuine enough, for example, Microsoft, and filed a registration for him. This guy only has one registration. And then you have this guy from another company where 3 of the sister companies also filed for him. Because if it is one single job, all trying to file just to maximize his chances in the lottery, that is what is fraud. And we've been through that mess. Luckily, it's not a problem in the future. People fear things can go bad, but at least I want to be positive and hope that the mess in the H1B process, the fraud in the H1B process is refined, but the sanctity of the program is still maintained.
In Great Andhra, which is the go-to website for me and a lot of Telugu people, the article stated that H1B will be abolished. I don't know if you've come across that article, but how true is that article or how true is that news? If it is true, when is it going to be abolished?
I don't think there is any basis for that news. I did see that article, but in terms of any legal basis, any data supporting that fact, I don't think they have any proper legal basis. President Trump's wife, Melania Trump, she was on H1B. So he understands that H1B program does have a lot of merit. Is another trusted advisor, Elon Musk. He was on H1B. So he understands what kind of high-level talent that you can attract into this country through this program. So I don't think there is any merit when people say that the H1B program is getting abolished. Another big thing, President Microsoft's CEO, Satya Nadella, Google's CEO, Sundar Pichai. So these are all, talented, highly talented people that were attracted because of the H1B program. So when we have all these statistics backing that the H1B program is actually helping the country, there is no way that the program will get abolished.
You briefly mentioned about Stephen Miller, and he has been a talking point because, as you said, he's architected the immigration policy for President Trump. How critical is for us to follow Stephen Miller, his policies, and how is he going to impact the next administration?
So Stephen Miller is probably the only person that anybody on OPT or H1B should be following, because he's going to be the chief architect of any major immigration policies for the next 4 years. So Stephen Miller, so he originally worked with Senator Jeff Sessions of Alabama, and from then onwards he became an advisor to the President Trump in the first term. He became a speechwriter. He used to write a lot of his speeches, and he architected a lot of controversial policies in the first term. So Stephen Miller, he's going to be advising Department of Homeland Security. He already got an official role, and you can expect a lot of changes in the future. And some of his policies don't make sense to me. Some of his policies make good sense to me. I don't know if he's feeding into the anti-immigration frenzy and trying to create these rules, or sometimes it is really in the best interest of the country. We don't know. But some of his policies are upfront ridiculous. Some of his policies are really, and we'll just wait and watch what's going to happen in the next couple of years.
Can you give us an example of any such instance where you thought this is absurd? Why are we doing this?
When President Trump was in office and Mr. Stephen Miller was advising him, the first ridiculous policy that I saw was the travel ban. A very, very hastily approached executive order. Yes, there is a need to stop a certain set of people, but I think the travel ban was too broad, which I think Stephen Miller played a very big part of it. So the president has his power, which is the executive order. So he comes out with an executive order. And if it is not constitutional, the courts can enter into the picture and can stop that executive order, which is exactly what happened with the travel ban. One of Stephen Miller's idea was to bump up the wages to a point where the H1B program is not even feasible. They've done it, and the way they have done it is they took a very, very hasty approach. Normally, there is a way you do it. So the way you do it is you follow something called Administrative Procedure Act, APA. Mm-hmm. It's a slow rule-making process. So you propose a rule, you wait for a certain amount of time so the public can actually read the rule, see the rule, and comment upon it, give their own comments. And then again you go back, you review the comments, and then again maybe you change the rule. You publish the final rule, wait for some time, and then it becomes a rule. So instead of going through this entire proper, appropriate APA process, they passed an interim rule. All of a sudden they said, okay, the salaries are increasing, and they bumped up the salaries to a point where it doesn't make sense to hire somebody on H1B because it was not matching reality. So I think what will happen this time is they'll learn from their experiences. Interim rule changes, quick rule changes are not good for the country. Definitely, I think this time they'll be a little bit slow, and they'll be a little bit more practical when they make these rule changes.
What does the data say in terms of approval between President Biden's administration to Trump's administration, the first term? What does the data say there?
In 2017, he became the president. And right in 2017, the approval rate started coming down. The denial rate started going up. 2018-19, it went up to 18% the very first year, the denial rate. Irrespective of working in this country on H1B for such a long time, they saw denials. And by the time President Trump left the office, almost 25% of the cases were getting denied. And then once we had President Biden take up of office, things changed. And I don't think it is only because of Biden administration. I think it's also because of a court case that happened in 2020. In June of 2020, we had a court case where the court came and said the USCIS memos that talk about client letters, that talk about contracts, they are not valid. So USCIS had to take out that restriction of client letters and vendor letters and a few other things. But now the client letters, vendor letters, they're not mandatory anymore. And because of that, I think the way the cases were getting adjudicated has become a lot different. So now if you ask me what is the current approval rate, based on their own statistics that USCIS releases, about 95% of the cases are getting approved. So that is like a very high number. So less than about 4% of the cases are getting denied. So I think what that could mean to all is, yes, a few set of people are definitely going to get impacted, But the majority of the cases, I think, will still get approved.
As you explained, if your bachelor's is non-IT degree, there have been cases in the past. Is that also something that you anticipate in the future? Do you see this recurring again?
I definitely think that if somebody does not have the relevant degree, so for example, the software jobs, say somebody has like a chemical engineering degree or a mechanical engineering degree, and they're trying to get hired to be a software developer for a company. I definitely think there will be an uptick in RFEs for those kind of folks. That being said, the current rule with USCIS is that you can combine your education with work experience. You can get a US professor to evaluate your credentials, a combination of education together with work experience. And if the professor evaluates that to a computer science degree, you don't have a problem. What happened in the Trump administration was they used to attack these evaluations. And the biggest challenge that I see is a lot of people come and say, I've worked in India for a long time. But this company, for example, Wipro, maybe TCS, maybe Infosys, they have a policy where they cannot give an experience letter that talks about the job duties. They will give me a very generic experience letter that talks about my start date, end date, my title. That's it. They don't really explain what I've done over there. And that's a challenge because USCIS requires evidence from the employer that talks about the job duties. So this is a challenge that we see. And what I suggest to people is, if your employer gives you that experience letter, a proper experience letter documenting the job duties, it's going to make your case strong. If not, go talk to your colleagues that you worked with, have them attest to what you have done, gather all those evidences, make your case strong. So you would have more burden, and what that means is you would have more challenges where you really have to prove your experience, because yes, you know that you worked in that company, but unless you provide documentary evidence of that experience to USCIS, they'll not be happy. Try to already start working with your past employers and ask them to give you experience letters, affidavits, gather all that evidence, because when the time comes, you'll not probably have a lot of time.
Do you see us getting green cards as soon as we do our masters or as soon as we graduate?
I would say possibly in the future, possibly. At this point of time, the only basis we have for that speculation is I was on a podcast and somebody asked him this question. And he said that he's in favor of granting green cards to anybody that studies in US, either a bachelor's program or a master's program or a PhD program. So he was giving his opinion, and in his opinion, he said that he thinks that they should be granted green cards. And ever since, we see a lot of news about this. I don't know if this will happen or not, but again, definitely I would say it is a possibility.
Do you think it is going to be his day one action to grant green cards to anybody who has a master's degree or who has a US degree?
Immigration is definitely one of the top priorities, but within immigration, their most day one priority is illegal immigration, not legal immigration. But when it comes to legal immigration, I don't think they will take any kind of a hasty decision. They'll probably take it slow. It's definitely going to take some time before they even start introducing some bills about some changes and discussing, or any kind of executive orders that will touch the major legal programs.
How bad is the EB2 EB3 queue right now?
So right now, the current data says that if you entered this green card process in 2012, either on EB2 or EB3, a company sponsored your green card application, which is basically the Perm application. So in 2012, if your company has submitted a Perm application, you are eligible to get a green card right now.
What about the ridiculous wait times to get the Perm approved? Is that situation going to change anytime soon?
Yes, the H1Bs, the processing time has decreased. The H1Bs, the approval rate has gone up under Biden administration. But Perm applications is one area where things have become extremely bad in the Biden administration. In President Trump's administration, the Perm process was a lot more smoother. Perms were getting approved a lot more quickly. I've never seen Perms take more than a year. at least a majority of the perms. Right now, if you get a perm approved in about a year, perm is basically the labor application, the perm labor, the first step in the green card process. If a perm gets approved in less than 1 year right now, it is a kind of a miracle. But to even file the perm, you have to do something called a prevailing wage determination process. That itself is a 6-7 month process. You have to do advertising, recruiting, and then a cooling off period. There is no way somebody can get the perm processing completed right from the beginning to the end in less than 20 months right now. So that is ridiculous. And I'm really hoping that things will change in the future.
Do you have any situations where people who've completed the masters ran out of their time because their perm has not approved? Is that something you come across often?
Sadly, more and more lately, I've been coming across this situation multiple times. Just recently, we had a case where the employee had a very good degree, a computer science degree from one of the top schools. Unfortunately, he was not able to get his perm processed in the 6 years' time. So anybody that starts on H1B visa, they only have 6 years. And this is something what a lot of people don't know. In 6 years, if your perm process is not started, you run the risk of having to leave this country. Your H1B cannot be extended. You got this amazing US experience, education experience and work experience. Now you're having to throw everything away, go to India and start again from scratch. And unfortunately, this is where the immigration system is failing a lot of very talented young professionals out there.
What is the right time? So let's say if I'm a student or if I'm on H1B, what is the right time for me to start the green card process? What is your suggestion there?
If your goal is to stay back in the United States, you should talk to the employer. Can you sponsor me? Can you sponsor me and go through the legal process to sponsor my green card? You should ask them on day one. And what that means is most of the young people out here, they find employment right after they graduate and they're on OPT. So even if you're on OPT, you don't even have to be on your STEM OPT extension. Even when you have started your initial OPT, if you find a good job, you find a good employer, and you like that job, and that is a job that you want to continue for a long time, talk to them immediately and say, can you sponsor my green card? Because the sooner you start, the sooner you'll get your perm processing done. I know a bunch of cases. We have a lot of our own clients who have filed the perm filings, the perm applications for their employees who are on OPT. And even before they got their H1B, while they were still on OPT, their perm process was over, their I-140 was over. But the thing is that not every employer would want to spend a lot of money on the green card and perm process. But again, you never know, because if you do have the talent and the employer is willing to hire you, maybe they would sponsor your green card. So my suggestion is start on day one of your employment.
How big of a mess is EB2 EB3 right now?
It's going to take forever, and which is what is happening. If somebody is born in India and somebody is in the United States and some company is sponsoring their green card, if their green card process starts this year in 2024, more than likely it will take more than 100 years before they can see their green card. And every year, if you see, the dates are not progressing. The priority dates are stuck. So more and more you're waiting and you're not getting the green card. And I'm just hoping the rules will change, because if the rules don't change, maybe even in 100 years, you might not get a green card in EB2 or EB3 category if you were born in India.
What is the next logical alternative? EB2 is a mess, EB3 is a mess, EB1 is a distant chance. What's the next alternative?
So everybody should explore EB1A, EB1, and especially EB1C, if at all they're qualified. So EB1A is for extraordinary ability. EB1C is for for those folks who have worked abroad and trying to come into United States to work for the same company. For example, TCS India, they worked as a manager. They're trying to come to TCS USA as a manager, intra-company managerial transfer. So if you are in one of those categories, EB1C is a great option. So EB1 is also not a quick option right now, but still it's a great option. So I think that everybody should still explore the EB1 option. If it is going to be a workable solution for your case, yes, it's a good option. EB5 is, I think, the only remaining best option for Indian nationals to get a green card right now. The reason is, out of all the employment categories, EB5 is the only category that is current. And what that means is, if you pursue that, you are eligible to get a green card right away. The idea of EB5 is you bring in some money, in this case at least $800,000. You put in that money, and that money is used to generate jobs. The only thing is it's investment at risk. So if you might get a profit, you might get a loss. And what that means is you have to do a lot of due diligence because you have control over that money. And most of the time, I mean, if you are doing your due diligence, you should not lose any money. And EB5 has multiple categories, but on a high level, there are a couple of categories in EB5, such as rural or TEA, that are current right now. And if you invest in a rural project, you can invest money today, and in less than a year, you can expect your green card because things are moving very fast. They made a lot of new rule changes in 2022, and after 2022, EB5 became a very, very good, a clean option. I say clean option because pre-2022, even if you invested money, it was taking a very long time. Right now, you invest money in a proper, appropriate enterprise. In less than a year, you can expect a green card. And what I'm seeing in my practice is more and more Indians are getting attracted to this option. The reason is EB1 is closed, EB2 is closed, EB3 is closed, EB4 is not a viable option for most of the Indians out here. So they are only left with EB5, and more people are pursuing it. Sometimes you can take a loan, sometimes you can get a gift from your parents, your family members. You can pull up that money and invest to get a green card. And in the future, definitely it's a great option. People should be looking at this option.
Another popular opinion that I keep hearing is H4 abolishment. Is that going to happen anytime soon? What is your opinion?
That's another rumor that has been floating around a lot in the last couple of days. 2016, when President Trump took office for the first time, H4 EAD was just recently introduced by President Obama through an executive order. So President Trump probably could have issued another executive order to probably take H4 EAD out, or he could have done something to remove H4 EAD. And what we saw during 2016 to 2020 is the administration did not try to do anything to hamper this H4 EAD process. To me, I mean, they had a chance to do something to H4 EAD if they really wanted to remove it. They didn't do it. So I don't think they will do it. And there is another important data-driven reason. If you look at our unemployment right now, the unemployment in the United States right now, it's at a very low level. The unemployment is not very high. What does it mean? When unemployment is low, it means that there are not enough people out there looking for a job. So if H4 EAD gets banned or removed or abolished, what would happen is all these people would not be able to work, and there will be slots with the employers where they have to fill up these slots because they need people to work, and if they cannot have people work for them, the businesses will fail. So end of the day, you're going to impact your US economy if these people are not allowed to work for these companies because the unemployment rate is so low. So my thing is, as long as the unemployment rate is low, they are not going to do anything to touch H4 EAD. There is less incentive for the government to even go back and remove H4 EAD.
In your day-to-day experiences, you listen to a lot of people. Any stories in particular that have stuck with you, that have impacted you? Are you able to share any of those with us?
I had once this case. He was working on H1B, and unfortunately, his mother had cancer. This was during a couple of years back when the stamping. There were a lot of issues with stamping and so on. So he had a project, and then he found that his mom had cancer, and it was a bad form of cancer that did not have a cure, and her days were numbered. And this poor guy, he still wanted to go and see his mom in spite of what his mom said, and he was making his own plans. And at a certain point of time, he lost his project, and losing project happens all the time. And so what happened is he was trying to find a new job because he can find a new job. Unfortunately, his mom died during that particular time. And I tell him the risk. If he goes to India, he does not have a project, he might not even get back. He needs stamping in this case. He cannot even get back. I don't even know what to do. And I just know what he's going through. And this was one of those sad situations where I'm helpless. I cannot do anything. And I told him the honest truth that if he goes there, he cannot come back. The summary was he was not able to go see his mom. And I don't know. I mean, I see that story come to my mind so many times, and I feel so helpless. Legal immigrants are facing so many problems. You are being scared. I mean, in this modern age, you should not be scared to go travel. And US as a country is not a country that intends to do these things. But the way the immigration rules are set up, they are archaic. I mean, these are rules from 1990s. So these rules need to be revised. And I'm just hoping that these things are focused.
Is that the most stressful part of your job?
So when I see people being successful in their career goals, they get the green cards, they get their approvals, I feel so happy because I feel like I'm doing my job. And now the stressful part, because facts are always not the same. You cannot always guarantee success. You're always going to have the other side. You're always going to see denials. You're always going to see some bad cases. And when sometimes you're helpless, no matter what you try to do, you have to follow the system. You're a part of the system. When I see this notice of intents to revoke, somebody's on H1, their employer did something wrong. Maybe their employer put a fake client letter, and USCIS did a site visit, had a multiple registration problem, and USCIS found out. And they have data to show that the employers knew each other. It was collusion. You're going to get a notice of intent to revoke. They give you the notice to explain. Sometimes you can explain, sometimes you cannot explain. And the times you cannot explain, there is a person out there, there is a human face out there who's going to be impacted. The employee is going to get impacted. And when you see a family suffering because of such reasons, it's going to come and impact you as a person, because end of the day, we are not rocks, we are humans. And at one point of time, I had face paralysis because I was so stressed. I mean, seeing these things.
Can you please explain me about that situation with face paralysis? What happened? Are you okay to talk about it?
Oh, sure. So I had face paralysis a couple of years back. So face paralysis is where like half of your face doesn't function. So when you smile, that the muscles on that side of the face don't even move, and it looks weird. And when I first saw it in the mirror, I thought it was probably a heart attack. And then at least the doctor said it is not that bad. It is just the muscles are not working, and it's called Bell's palsy. And Bell's palsy is temporary, and in a few days it's going to get better again. And thing was, I think so. What I did is like started taking more help. We started hiring more attorneys and started distributing work. And especially in my profession, if you see a denial, the denial is actually impacting somebody in a very, very bad manner. So that stress, that fear is always there. And you are a human. You can only do what you can.
Someone who's a non-immigrant who's come here to the US, how should you approach this administration? What is your take on it? How do we be prepared?
Most of the immigrants that I deal with, because I deal with like thousands and thousands of immigrants. I mean, just the number of H1Bs that I work in a year are a couple of thousands. And what I see is most of the people are very hardworking. It's very rare that somebody wants to get in trouble with the law and do something bad. The same set of people, maybe when they go to India, they're different. But when they're in US, the majority of the people that I see from India, they are very hardworking. They are very talented. They try to do their best. So I think that should continue. And if you see any bad influences such as drugs or these kind of things, just stay away from them and try to find a good employer. If you feel that you're working with a bad employer, talk to people. There are very good government rules that protect you. If you are being a victim of something, some wrongdoing, you have strong rules. So know your rights, know what you can do. Don't let anybody take advantage of you. But on your side, always follow the rules. If in doubt, talk to your colleagues, talk to your maybe your seniors, and talk to the people you trust. So doing so, we follow the law, everybody's happy, and then things go well.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Chand, for your time. I think it's been extremely helpful for us and hopefully for our viewers as well. Can you tell how this experience was? This is your first podcast, you said, right? How was this experience for you?
I think some of the questions I've never. Normally, when I talk in shows, what I do is I just talk about the law. I think the way I see it different is you're trying to bring the human element out of it. It is about the impact that things are having on the human aspect, the cultural aspect, and so on. And I really enjoyed that part, and it's an eye opener for me. It's You can probably Google and like in 2 minutes find out what the rule is. It's about the human aspect. It's about learning from other people's experiences, maybe their successes, maybe for their failures, and then intertwine that with the rules. I think that's what I kind of enjoyed today. It was a very true pleasure to be on the show and talk in this format, and I really enjoyed it. It's a great experience.
And I do have to tell you, once President Trump takes the office, we will reconvene and we'll probably dissect how he's heading. So I'm going to sign you up for another show, just so you know. Thanks a lot for your time again. Can you give us your good words for Telugu Tales viewers?
Sure. Firstly, I'm very impressed with your videos. I think you're not only helping the community, but you're also helping in general, even the US as a society. And I think your zeal and your energy, I think, was just amazing.
Thanks a lot, Chand Parvataneni. Signing off, and it was an amazing experience with you, and we'll hopefully reconnect in February and see how it goes.
Definitely, I'm looking forward to reconnecting again very soon. And then any issues or any comments that Telugu Tale viewers have, I definitely think we should help them as a pro bono, because it's our way of giving back to the society. So if anybody has any legal issues, something small, something that doesn't take time, but something they're stuck, if they bring it to your attention, let me know, and we'll try to give the message back to the community and educate them with any of their legal questions.